say this is a complaint, it's simply a matter of fact. I look my age, which is 56. Copious research has revealed that men are only attracted to women who are capable of childbearing. It's a biological imperative. Men can't help it. Apparently, we were put on the planet only to make more humans, not to have candlelit dinners and talk about our feelings. It's obvious, the research tells us, women who cannot procreate are no longer useful to the species, which is why they craft, write Yelp reviews, and attend Meryl Streep movies in drunken packs. And which is also why the research goes on and on. Men will always overlook women like me and go for the stoned girl at the end of the bar who keeps saying mute instead of moot. Mountains of research has been done on the subject of why older men will always choose the younger woman. Not so surprisingly, there is nowhere near that amount of research on why men cling to the belief that women love dick pics. I say that I no longer get hit on, but this is an exaggeration. I have not mentioned homeless gentlemen, to whom I have real appeal. Hey, you are gorgeous. One of my regulars on Fairfax and 3rd in Los Angeles yelled after me the other day, "Give me some of that sugar." And I won't lie, it makes me feel good. A couple of years ago, I was sitting on a park bench and a grizzled man with one leg of his pants ripped up to his thighs scooted in next to me. He burped and then said, "How's about you and me getting crazy in a hotel of your choosing?" I turned to him, trying not to inhale, and said, "Do you really think that I'm going to go to a hotel room with you? Does that ever work?" He replied, "I figure if I ask 100 women, one of them will say yes." There you are. I was one of 100 women he was planning on hitting on that day. So it is with this recent, very spotty record that I sat at a bar a couple of weeks ago, nursing a drink and writing in my daily planner after teaching a class, when the bartender slipped me a handwritten note. The handwriting looked European-ish, and it read, "We have been admiring you." Red wine, scarf, notebook. Who are you, and what would it take for you to reveal yourself? It was signed, Lodovico. My pulse fluttered a bit, and I did what I always did back in my 20s when being hit on was a regular thing. I completely ignored it. After all, I'm married, and I didn't want to lead Lodovico down on. But more deeply, I have never in my life responded to anything like this with any kind of grace. My shy inner child takes over, and I simply shut down. Which does not mean that I wasn't intrigued. Lodovico had certainly gotten my attention, and with my head bowed as I continued to write in my planner, I scanned the bar through my eyelashes. Lodovico had said, "We were admiring you." We? Could he possibly be one of the two grayish but fit-looking men a couple of seats away? Or possibly Lodovico had simply been using the royal we. In which case he could be one of the few men at the end of the bar who I couldn't see without looking up directly. I scoped quickly, looking for an ascot. What would it take for me to reveal myself, I thought. And my first answer would be, not a whole lot. Lodovico could walk on over, buy me a drink, and ask me how I felt about pretty much anything, and I would reveal myself right away. I like revealing myself. My family will tell you that I reveal myself far too much. My 12-year-old has even told me to stop revealing myself so much and stick to basics like what I did that day. As long as what I did that day didn't include thinking about how much texting is hampering our ability to make real connections, and what I really need is for my boys to be able to express themselves authentically with emotive language, their hopes and fears, so that they can ultimately find true meaning in a different universe. Lodovico, if I don't help them, who will? Not their father, who lately finds his meaning in the Chicago Bears lineup. Lodovico, I cannot tell you how much I long to reveal myself. To you, especially, you who have chosen me over the girl next to me, who just fell off of her bar stool. I was an American born during the Cold War in Munich, Germany, where the sound of my parents' late-night booze-fueled conversations with artists, educators, and social activists who worked in Radio Free Europe was the walla of my childhood. I am 56 years old, which means, Lodovico, that I embody the optimism and radicalism of the 60s, when giving peace a chance was not a slogan on a high-end t-shirt, but a viable philosophy. And when women grew their underarm hair to declare their equality to men, instead of shaving their cooches to declare their insecurity over not measuring up to their boyfriend's porn fantasies. Lodovico, I do hope that you enjoy a full bush. My guess is that you do. Since you chose me over falling down girl who just yelled, "Who moved my chair?" But I digress. I was in the middle of revealing myself. I lived in New York City in the early 80s, pre-AIDS, pre-economic crash, pre-snark, when young people still believed that they could make something so profound they could change the world. Feminism wasn't a confusing concept, and sex was fun because nobody gave a shit about the rules. It means I did cocaine in the VIP room in Studio 54 and danced with Andy Warhol. Okay. He just stood there and I shimmied around him. To be honest, that's all anybody did with Warhol. Later that night, I actually danced with Tony Danza and Phyllis Diller together. I have yet to meet another person who can make this claim. Let's see, what else? Sorry, Lodovico, I got distracted by falling down girl asking the bartender to scratch her back. Yes, to get back to revealing myself, I've written a best-selling book, married my best friend, been a beauty editor for a national magazine, backpacked through India, gazed upon the Panama Canal, walked around the Gaza pyramids, birthed 2 children, read most of the classics, lived in London, published in the New York Times, and shipped chunks out of the Berlin Wall just after it fell. I've hiked to the camp of the Matterhorn, the real one, occupied LA in a tent with my family, danced with the London Festival Ballet, sold 7 television pilots, met living saints, and walked the very steps that Gandhi walked before he was shot. I have stood amongst the funeral pyres on the ghats of the Ganges, looked through the smoke of burning bodies, seen my own death, and understood my existence to be both profoundly and utterly irrelevant. I have stood in a classroom teaching 7th grade English and wondered how any of us survived the wounding mortification of yearning and not getting. And I have squatted behind a lone rock in the middle of the Sahara Desert, digging a hole for my own waist, and realized that the only thing that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom is shame. That and thinking puns are funny. Lodovico, you who can look past superficialities and ask a mature woman to reveal herself, you know that eventually most of us have a shitting in the wilderness epiphany. Although I can hazard a guess that falling down girl might never get there. Lodovico, you are the only man in this entire bar who knows that I am the most interesting woman in this room. Because let's face it, physical beauty always, always wanes unless you're Diane Sawyer. Aging, for me, is the pure lack of fuck I give about anything that doesn't make me a better, more compassionate, more connected, more useful, more committed, more sexy human being. If only to myself. Allow me to philosophize here. After all, you are the man who asked. Here it is, in the truest sense of aging is radicalizing. Surviving loss and facing an uncertain future either breaks you or makes you a badass. Surviving loss gives you boundless compassion for the weak, the dispossessed, the miserable, the vulnerable, and the spiritually numb. Surviving heartbreak teaches you that humility is not passivity, tears are not weakness, stillness is not laziness, and aging is not death. Thank you for asking me to reveal myself to you, Lodovico. In another lifetime, perhaps we would have met, but I am afraid I will have to remain a mystery to you, as I most certainly am not to anyone who knows me, given my proclivity for revealing much more than is ever asked.